welcome to a new episode of the Design Comedy. If you are curious to discover that word we all call design industry, from creative vision to strategies, this series is for you. Today's guest is not lacking in creativity too, but before to welcome her, let's introduce this little video to discover her identity. Welcome, Paola.
Welcome to me.
That's right.
Thanks.
We have the pleasure today to have just Paola Jannelli, Creative Director of Jannelli&Volpi.
That's right.
Listen, Paola, we have seen a bit from the video and from this little introduction, and certainly from what I know, that you are a woman of incredible and great culture. Creativity above all, so much imagination and vigor. I'm sure we'll discover many aspects of you, which are also reflected in the company, during the topics we are going to investigate a little bit today. We are a little curious, so get ready for some questions.
I'm ready.
Let's look into the strategy, the vision, certainly, and also the Factory 4.0 concept that you are pursuing. But where do you want to start?
Wow. We can start with these first four meanings you said about my person, which I disagree with a bit, in the sense that presenting myself immediately as of great culture sincerely scares me a bit. But it's true that in my person more souls live together. And the first one that unites them all is curiosity. And thanks to my curiosity and my lack of personal data, basically I'm against the date on the identity card. I find myself to be very young in the cultural field and therefore ready to acquire any kind of information, rather old if we turn on the topic of wallpapers, on which I feel very prepared.
Then today I will interrogate you. I'd start with the position where you are in charge. So, the Creative Lab. Tell us a little bit about what this is about and how the project started.
Sure. The Creative Lab, as the word itself says, is the place where the collections are created. 8 people are fixed. The people who come in and out depend a lot on the projects we have to carry out. And they come from almost every part of the world, in the sense that we have people who are clearly Italian, from our compatriots who bring culture, especially from the south. The creative aspect of the south is very strong. Then we have a very nice Mexican guy, Americans, Israelis, guys who come from all over the world and who certainly give us a wide cultural vision, because 90% of our reality is abroad compared to the production we have.
So, a 360 contamination, source of creative inspiration, a bit from all territories.
Definitely, yes. Because our sector is an industry. We're a factory which opens essentially abroad.
Talking about inspiration, therefore, a whole part of design. When you think to new ideas for wall coverings or wallpapers, as we were talking about behind the scene earlier, what are the inspirations that lead you to create these new trends? Come from fashion, come from color, come from nature?
The reality is that in order to have a creative cue, a creative vision, you always have to have stakes. It's the constraints that determine the principles of creativity. Where there's no limit, you enter another dimension. You enter the artistic dimension, the dimension of maximum inspiration. But in reality, we make products that we must express not the trend of the moment, but possibly what it will be. So the first thing is to set a goal, where a collection goes, where it is going to be placed in the country it's aimed at, which category of people. From a certain point of view, it should be of the highest liking, but above all, what kind of diffusion we want it to have. So a contract collection, rather than a collection more devoted to residential.
And in this process, from design to implementation, what happened? What are the difficulties that you encounter, or how does the process take place?
From the temporal point of view, it's like a child. You have to think about it first. Babies can be born like that, suddenly. It takes very little. In fact, the construction of a baby takes 9 months. For us, the collection is like a child. It undergoes very precise processes. Initially, it's precisely the objectives that we set ourselves, and then the techniques with which we want to make the product. The colours that are correct, and undoubtedly the fashion trend in this sense helps us a lot. And an all-round vision of what happens outside the factory. So what must be a first cue for a person who works for me, for what personally I am, is to be as far out of production as possible. We need to know what's going on outside of us to understand how best to achieve ourselves.
One of your specificity concerns the technology you use to give birth to the products.
Let's get into one aspect if you want a little more detail. The characteristics of the Jannelli&Volpi factory is to have a versatility of technologies. This variety of technologies makes it possible to get the product into one machine and then get it out again in a semi-finished product in another, and then maybe return to the previous machine. The biggest goal is to create a good product, a beautiful product. We are willing to do anything, and really, it's not a crying shame to be Italians, but the technical aspect is an aspect that must be very careful. And that allows us, through different technologies, even the most contemporary, because we have extremely advanced technologies and even ancient technologies. Even there, in my opinion, the date of birth is not interesting, because it's the quality of the machine, the type of machine that responds to you from the point of view of its expressive capacity to make certain products rather than others.
But in fact, compared to Factory 4.0, to this vocation for technology and innovation, I was wondering how you managed to work with one of the machines of 1930.
We have a machine from the 1930s in the company, but in reality it's a technology from the mid-19th century. It's called the traditional machine. We call it the Regina. the Queen. It's called Regina because it's the beginning of a continuous printing. A big drum can work on 12 colours, and it's slow in production too. Its main characteristic is how it leaves the colour. It leaves it in such a way that it has almost a pictorial cut, so strong that only it can give, so only that technology can respond. Of course, in terms of production time, ink consumption, all-round processing, I wouldn't want to go into too much detail. It's a machine that many people would want to have. Moreover, you need a technician who knows how to make it work very well, because its tuning is the tuning, say, as a Mickey Mouse of 36, which I have. In short, it's a very delicate process.
It's not so easy.
No, it's very difficult.
You have to say that if some customers complain about a possible delay in delivery,
it's hard to say to Regina that she arrives late. In fact, if she arrives late, all in all, it's her being queen, and we wait.
So, the choice of the technology to be used depends on the project you have to realize.
Absolutely.
Look, let's change a bit. Let's leave the factory floor and stay here in the studio and take advantage of your creative advice. As you saw, we have this beautiful black wallpaper. What will you do? Do you like our studio?
Then I can tell you that...
For our design comedy, of course.
Yes, of course. I can tell you that, as it is so easy to use white, it's also easy to use black. But it's interesting to see how the light plays on this set. And light is one of the components that works a lot on wallpaper because there are products that reflect the light. There are colours to help to capture the light. And there are real wallpapers where inside we find luminous wires that can also become useful tools to give directions.
Well, Paola, then, we have the lights. We say that somehow a decorative element would fit. You are here today. I want to take advantage of your advice. So it's bad to say take advantage, but in this case, yes. And I ask you to think of a decorative element, a wallpaper. What do we do here?
Then here, honestly, I trust a great guy. One of the great thinkers and creators of 1900 was Le Corbusier, who designed wallpaper and specifically collected what is one of the creative stakes of wallpaper, the module. The module is that element that must be reproduced in order for it to be produced continuously. So we have to imagine this sheet, which is a sheet that has to be printed. Le Corbusier thought of doing it this way. He took half a square, coloured it, and then reproduced it in the same way, exactly in the part below, to build the module. And this is his module. Consequently, in the print we will find the other half of a square, and then under and over the other piece. At this point, the upholsterer arrives and says, among other things, here would look great. We join the sheet, and the upholsterer can say that it is an even ratio. And consequently, he joins this piece to this piece, because the module we saw was this one, and he goes to compose that famous square we were saying about before. But the distracted upholsterer at a certain point goes to put another sheet side by side and decides to jump, instead of making it become an even ratio.
It flails it.
And it becomes an odd relationship. So we have a design that is composed in a different way than the previous relationship. We go on with another sheet, and in this case the upholsterer got distracted. They called him on the phone. No, because the telephone wasn't there then. But he attaches the other form like this, randomly, as it comes. And here, Le Corbusier, with just one sheet and two relationship marks, has devised an upholstery that is never equal to itself. if it is split in a different way, or equal to itself if it is put at an even ratio, or different to alternating sheets if it is put in an odd ratio.
Perfect. I will say original, creative and timeless.
And especially not mine.
Exactly, but we can produce it with Jannelli at this point.
No, we can do this.
Can we do that?
We just go to the Corbusier Foundation and ask him.
Okay, I'd say that if you want to do it, I'll sign it, and it will become a bestseller of Jannelli&Volpi, and it will be inspired by the design comedy.
Perfect.
Going back to production at this point, we said Factory 4.0 first. Let me understand something more.
This is a fundamental theme today. That is, a factory to be such must project itself into the future and understand, for example, that the circular economy is one of the fundamental and necessary constraints. We have built a process and put something back. This is an extended version of the industry because by ourselves we no longer build anything for the recovery of production waste. A certain specific type of waste. We have entrusted that to a company to produce a product called Green Wall, and they make synthetic fibre football pitches. We don't stop here, in the sense that we have always used water-based paints. So the water circuit is a closed circuit. There are purification processes, thanks to microorganisms that eat the colour, eat the residual colour. So our water is put back into circulation. And then, with other waste, we produce confetti. And we make the recovery of all the iron. And then we do not only have a vision related to the matter of Factory 4.0, but there is also a criterion of solidarity with the people who work within the company.
I understand now that you have a little bit told and deepened, and I can actually read those values and also a little those healthy principles. Those good thoughts that go precisely from production to the relationship with the territory, the relationship with human resources, and then your big family also made by employees who rotate in the world of Jannelli&Volpi. And also the attention to sustainability and the whole theme of reuse. And I immediately think why some of the great brands, even in the fashion world, have placed their trust in you to produce collection under license. I refer to Armani and Missoni.
And Marimekko also. I would like to remember it because Marimekko's drawing culture is an important value. You said very right things for us because we learned a lot from these brands. We started with Armani Casa and Armani's creative staff. And this put us in a very particular creative process. Working with Mr. Armani is not only a source of great honour, a man who has changed the sense of taste and who will remain in eternity for all the values he has brought within his field and also outside. And then undoubtedly, if Armani Casa chooses to fire, not in the sense of sending out, but to merge with a company like Jannelli&Volpi, this is a reason of great prestige for us, who I believe we have deserved in the field.
Let's say that with these three collaborations and your collection, so the brand's owner of Jannelli&Volpi, you can stand in the palm of your hands. We have over 14 lines produced every year, right? Did I do my homework right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. What are the most successful collections? But most of all, since wallpaper or wall coverings dress houses, where we have a dress more suitable for the Middle East market rather than Russia, American or staying in Europe.
To continue in the range of the offer that we have, surely depends on the brand. We are going to identify. There is a brand contract, therefore products that have certifications that are suitable and recognised in almost all countries, not only in Europe, but also in America, except Japan, which has a history of its own, but which still allows us to have correct certifications. We are entering them in the context of the specific use of the contract, or in the super luxury product. We have already understood which is the most suitable location and the one always on the international level. Then there is another very important section, which is that of customization. Today's designers, or in any case, the contract itself, needs to be able to build ad hoc products on the basis of value, perhaps in order to maximize the expressive and even technical capacity of the product. But with need to customize, then to create the product on a project, we become a project tool.
Maybe I was going to ask you later, but staying on the subject of design, how is the relationship between the company and the designer rather than the external creative mind that would like to create something maybe even impossible to achieve?
The feature is to create ad hoc brands. There is this brand that I mentioned before that is called Code, that allows the designer to interface with targeted people who work within the company on projects, and consequently, born a need, a project, you respond to that specific project.
I'd say, Paola, to move away briefly, but not too far from Jannelli&Volpi as a reality. And we remain in the field of creativity at 360. And I'm referring to a project that you gave life to, and that actually talks a little bit about you and your passions. If I say Mille Fogli Lab, what do you answer?
I answer that Mille Fogli Lab represents what we are saying at the beginning of this nice confrontation, for which I thank you. It's a bit like the absence of an anagraphic date. In my opinion, the date of birth doesn't exist. We are always, how to say, at the beginning of experience of some idea. This was born just a few years ago, a meeting of friends who love to discuss various topics. And there is nothing better than reading the thoughts of others or initiatives or great stories of others to live 1,000 possible lives. So we founded this sort of reading workshop. So once a month for 7 years now, we meet and read the same book, comparing thoughts and reflections. But that's not enough, in the sense that reading is an experience, and as someone said, a plate of spaghetti always has the same recipe, a bit like a book that always has the same words. But when we eat it, it's always like the first time, because I have an interpretation of reading a book, you have another, and even your palate is different from mine. So we thought we'd combine books with recipes. A bit to make reading something very simple, necessary, and almost a kind of nourishment for the mind. And also to soften a bit the haughty people who make reading a flag of high-level culture.
So you like to stay at the stove?
I really like being at the stove because it's a creative element. You have the constraint of ingredients, but every time it's the creative act, the interpretation of that moment, the raw material in front of you, the number of diners you have, which determines a type of recipe that will be different from the previous one, even if it's called the same thing.
Your main dish?
Oh, I've got lots of specials. And even then, in my opinion, a lot depends on the situation.
I'm a fan, or rather, I dare say, an expert of orecchiette and laganari. So we are in Apulia. So much so that a few weeks ago, with another protagonist of the design comedy, we made a small promise or challenge for the second season of the design comedy. So it may be that our audience will see me and Giovanni Del Vecchio by Giorgetti do the Orecchiette live. So, Orecchiette e Laganari, what book would you associate them with?
Surely we're in the South, and the South means mystery, research, and also a lot of emotion and inspiration. It reminds me of Caro Filio, who created this lawyer, Warriors, if I'm not mistaken the name, who goes in search of enigmatic solutions to compelling stories. Lilla Puglia is a place of great culture where the beauties are hidden, sometimes not so much, and interesting plots are built. So it seems to me a good association.
All right, I'll take a cue. And what about your favorite book?
There too. There are some books that are kept on the bedside table, and I really feel like keeping it because it's an all-round book. I like it very much, and in the experience of Mille Fogli Lab, we reread it recently, and it's Memorie di Adriano.
And to this book, what kind of recipe do we match?
I think that for Memoirs of Hadrian, we need a simple recipe, linked to the territory of Lazio, certainly. So I would match the stuffed artichokes, which are not the Roman-style artichokes, but they are as I do them. And to know it, you have to follow the publication of the next book by Mille Fogli Lab, of which I will not tell you anything, but soon you can.
To appreciate
the real recipes of all the components.
I like this a bit quiz moment. I feel like Mike Bongiorno, and we are at Leave It or Double It.
Don't you Mrs. Longari me though?
Oh, no. I'll tell you what. I'll give you 3 options. Or not. I'll make you choose 3 wallpapers or collection you prefer, and to these we'll match a book and also a dish you prefer. You choose 3.
I would say that for Armani Casa's collection, I would choose a book called Il Talento di Cuoco by Suter, who is a Swiss writer, and I would combine it with Fagottino a sorpresa. The Armani collection is very versatile, very elegant, and looks a bit like a collection of aphrodisiac flavours. And this fagottino is made from fish, crustaceans, lobster, that are closed in a paper bag, made especially for the kitchen. And when it opens out of the oven, it releases an extraordinary fragrance. And you will either fall in love with it or you will remember it forever. So much is the true power of seduction that this dish can have. Maybe I exaggerated a bit, but I think it's true.
Well, looks fascinating, but also very tasty.
Yes, it is. As for the Missoni collection, I'd like to associate Doomsday. It's a strict book that would seem to differ from the freshness of Missoni's drawings. But it's a layered book that tells stories, and the story of the Missione family, very similar to that of the Jannelli family, is made of great tales of chimney, of experiences handed down, of memories, and consequently, the lasagna carousel, made with carousel bread, seems right to me for the tradition it brings with it.
Third and last?
Third and last, thinking about the spirit of the South. which I love very much also because I have a southern root. My father was Neapolitan and my belonging to this land is very strong. I would mention as a collection, all this is Jannelli&Volpi, JMV, Italian design, made by these mixes of different cultures but very connected to the Italian territory and culture. I would therefore refer to a beautiful book that you have to read on an island, possibly the island of Portugal, tasting a rabbit Portudan style, which is the island of Arturo. An all-female book that has to be read in summer is the right place for it.
All I can do is give you the victory of this quiz. Interesting are the inspirations and combination between the products, the culture, and at this point also the table.
Thank you to you.
Paola, it was certainly a very pleasant chat. Tasty and also very, very creative. We had instead confirmation. As for the initial premises for which you said that perhaps we have a bit exaggerating tone. So you are a volcano of creativity that managed to demonstrate a bit on all topics.
Thank you very much, and I thank all the staff and collaborators of the studio who welcomed me so warmly, and bonne chance, good appetite, good reading, and most of all, wallpapered.
Thanks to Paola's enthusiasm, sympathy and sparkly energy, we got to know more closely Jannelli&Volpi, a company that is certainly innovative, green and where creativity is at the first place, and it's expressed in collections and completely avant-garde collaborations, to give the decorative value a wide and deep meaning. This is part of the Design Comedy collection that, as you know, enter into the soul and underwear of all companies in the design industry. Wait for you in the next episode.